actually never testified before a planning or zoning or land use board before, correct? So this is your first non-debating voyage, so to speak?
Correct, this is the first time.
And you feel that you participated in the preparation of the plan that we submitted as part of the site plan waiver request, correct?
Yes, I did.
I'd like to have Mr. Nang duly qualified as an expert witness in the field of electrical engineering for the purposes of this application.
The board will accept his qualifications as a professional engineer. Please go ahead.
And so, Kevin, with regard to your participation in the preparation of the plan for this site plan waiver application, if you can just describe to the board what the purpose of the application is.
So the purpose of the application, to my understanding, is that Bedminster ordinance has a maximum foot candle allowance of 4 foot candles and a minimum of 0.2. And the lighting calculations that we've submitted show a maximum of 8.2 and a minimum of 0.
And you understand that your firm was originally engaged to prepare a plan based on complaints from tenants and certain employees and even patrons as to the low level of lighting in the King Center parking lot, correct?
Yes.
And just explain to the board in your own words why you believe it's necessary under the circumstances that you've observed and what you're proposing to swap out the fixtures as being proposed.
So from what I've observed, the light levels at the parking lot of this facility is very low. So we're proposing swapping it out with more efficient fixtures that are brighter. They're not significantly, from what I understand, the areas where where we exceed the ordinance isn't the entire parking lot, it's just specific spots where the calculation is above the maximum allowed. But for the purposes of our design, we're replacing all the lights in kind with more efficient, slightly higher output to provide the lighting that our client requires.
And you're familiar with certain, let's say, national and international standards regarding the Illuminating Engineering Society, or IES, in terms of standards for parking lots of this nature at the shopping center, correct?
Yes, the standard we use is the IES Illuminating Engineering Society RP-20 2014 edition, which is lighting for parking facilities, which covers parking lots and parking garages.
And did you take those standards into consideration in proposing on your plan the foot candle measurements?
Yes, we did. The standards provide a minimum recommendation, and the minimum requirement is to exceed their minimum requirements, but the minimum requirements isn't usually bright enough in most applications, so we do exceed the minimum recommended in the standard.
And what is that number?
That number is, for this particular use, 0.5 foot candles measured at grade. And for horizontal targets and vertical targets, which is the intersecting plane, is 0.25 foot candles.
Can you tell me what the current candlelight is at King's at this point?
I do not have that information.
Don't?
Not with me, no.
We may have another witness might be able to testify to that information, but that it would just be taken at certain individual locations, not necessarily. Was there an overall uniform measurement in terms of what the current measurement is?
If I heard, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
If I heard you right, your intent is to increase the illumination across the lot on average. Are we adding or subtracting poles, or are we just using the existing poles?
We're using the existing poles.
And you're just swapping out the fixtures mounted on the poles for new, more efficient fixtures?
Yes.
At the same time, you're going to increase the illumination in the lot by some percentage, by X average foot candles? What's the objective here?
The objective is the existing lights out there now are HID, high intensity discharge. We're switching out to LEDs, which are more efficient. Everyone knows, or it's common knowledge, LEDs are more efficient as a light fixture, but they have higher output as as well. So if we did a one-for-one swap, just going from HID to LED, the output increases. The actual percentage, I couldn't say off the top of my head.
Okay, so you're not decreasing the number of poles, so you're increasing, just by the greater efficiency of the new fixtures, you're increasing the illumination. And I thought you said before, it's someplace between 0 and 2.5, and you're going to bring it to up to 5-foot candles?
Wait, no.
Well, we should hear that. Why don't we let them,
Yeah.
he'll explain, I
Yeah.
think, what their proposal is.
Right, so why don't you explain what the proposal is in terms of a maximum, a minimum, and average for that? Yeah. Okay, so you're referring, Mr. Yang, to the plan that has already been submitted to the board, correct?
Yes.
Okay, does this identify which sheet you're referring to?
E101.
So looking at E101, can you identify in terms of what you're
Yeah.
proposing for purposes of maximum, minimum, and average performance?
Yes. So based on our calculation, the average for this whole plan is 1.25 for candles. The maximum is 8.2, and the minimum shows at 0. I'd like to note that the reason for the 0 reading is because the overall map was projected outside the actual lot area. So there's, to get the minimum reading, any reading on the map, it'll take the lowest one. In this case, in spots where we're off the lot entirely, it shows 0. For the area that the lot covers, from what I've seen, a majority of them actually do fall within Bedminster's ordinance of a minimum of 0.2 foot candles.
And in terms of answering the question that was provided or asked earlier, in terms of a 1.9, and then we'll get to Mr. Ferraro's report, with regard to the proposal of 1.90 foot candles on average, do you have a professional opinion as to whether that would be appropriate for the shopping center and why? As opposed to what the standard is in the ordinance for purposes of site plan waiver, which is, I believe, 29. Or 1, I'm sorry.
So the average in the ordinance is 1, and our proposed design at 1.9 average is twice above that. Now, one thing about foot candle readings, it's kind of hard to, visually, it's kind of hard to tell, for a human being to tell the difference between 1 and 2. We'd very easily be able to tell the difference between 1 and 30 because it's such a drastic change. But from my experience, 2-foot candles is appropriate for this parking lot. 2-foot candles is also unrelated to this plan. It's the minimum average required for egress paths.
So this, on an average basis, this is being proposed at an average foot candle measurement of less than 2.
Yes, slightly below.
And you believe that that's appropriate for safety and security of this site?
Yes.
And with regard to, why don't you pull out, Mr. Ferraro has written a report dated October 29th, 2018.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I have a quick question.
Yep.
It shows the maximum foot candles on the site is 8.2. Most of readings in the front parking lot look like they're around 2. Where's the hot spot?
The 8.2 is actually on the left side of the plan, where there's
You're referring now to
E101. If we look to
Yes,
the left
we're
side
on.
of the plan, there's 2 lights that are at a corner. There's 2 lights on each corner.
Corner
Okay, when
Rocco's
you're talking about the
looks
left
like?
side, you're talking about the lower left side of the plan?
Correct.
See?
Yeah, the
Yep.
corner of Rocco's looks like.
right there, there's the.
Is that the only,
That is where the 8.2 is.
okay,
And the reason for that is because those 2 corner lights are so close to each other that just the area that they share, that little spot, is at 8.2.
okay.
So other than that one at 8.2, what's your next, and I guess there's a 5.3 around there. Is it only those 2 little areas where you have 8.2 and 5 point something and everything else is
So
around 2 or?
one point regarding that fixture in response to,
Well, wait, before, just answer Mr.
Okay.
Jacobs' question, if you can just identify currently where the proposed, based on the plan that we've submitted on E101, where the hotspots are located.
the hotspots are located directly below that type of fixture. So if we look at another one, that's where the 5s are. Some of them is 6.
There's a 7,
So you're talking about
there's
there's
7
kind of
along
where
the
the
front,
fixture is?
from the back.
Yes, the fixture mounted against the building.
So if you look at E101 and you kind of draw the half moon behind the building, where those B fixtures are, that's where those hotspots are in the back. Correct?
Actually, it's the C fixture.
There's C fixtures.
I'm trying to distinguish the differentiation in the symbols you're using. The heavy cloud is the B fixture, and the lighter cloud is a C fixture? And is that an in-between cloud that's a A fixture?
No,
No.
no, those clouds are isofocal candle lines. And the weight goes to the amount of light level. The
So the heavier
fixtures are
cloud is just
designated by
the-
letters next
Where
to
it
it.
is.
I'm looking at the symbol, I don't see anything with a square, first of all, right?
No, but look for little C's and little A's and little B's near the circles.
So if you turn to E100.
What is this?
They're little
If
hard
you
to
turn
see.
to,
Oh, yeah.
Richard, if you turn to E100,
E100 actually identifies the location and type of fixture.
Picture schedule.
A, B, and C.
How fancy.
right? And so to answer the question in terms of where the hotspots are located, can you, referring to E100, identify to the board?
You got 2 lights right there, too.
Yes, the hotspots would be located directly below the C fixtures.
So the hotspots, is there a reason, other than you just have 2 fixtures there? Is that an area of high traffic that you want extra illumination, or what, is there a logic behind those?
It's a consequence of we are replacing fixtures in kind, and there's already 2 fixtures there, and this particular fixture has very high output.
Mayor, when we go over Post Report, we're going to address that.
One question that I had to clarify the average illumination. I'm looking at your chart, and you have really 3 averages. You have calc point 1, front parking only, rear parking driveway. The 1.9 average is the front parking.
Yes.
Overall on the site is 1.25, is that correct?
Yes,
And 1.22 is the rear, as the average.
correct.
So the overall average is 1.25.
Okay. So Kevin, if you would turn to Paul's report dated October 29, 2018. And if we go through, starting on the second page at number 2, talking about the type A fixtures, and Mr. Ferraro talks about the A, B, and C type fixtures as per, as identified on E100. So if we just go through Paul's report with regard to number 2, where he states that it is recommended that a fixture with a color of 3500 K for Kelvin be used on the site to reduce the harshness of the lighting and that there are numerous fixtures available with this color light, excuse me. Do you have an opinion on that as to whether that can be complied with by the applicant?
Yes, that, we can comply with that. There are numerous fixtures of the requested color that can be used in place of the type A fixture that's specified on the plan.
And to answer one of the questions that was raised earlier, if you replace the type A fixture that you originally proposed with the one that Mr. Ferraro is recommending, what would that do in terms of your foot candle measurement, if any?
It will affect it slightly without running an actual calculation. I can't say exactly, but it should be roughly the same.
If anything, it would go down.
Yeah.
Right? It would be reduced, if anything? Either stay the same or be reduced?
Correct, due to the color change.
And moving on to number 3, there's a recommendation from Mr. Ferraro that again, a 3000 K or Kelvin fixture be used for the type B fixture. Do you have an opinion as to, or a response to that?
Yes, similar to type A, we can recommend, or we can propose a 3000 Kelvin fixture to be used for that fixture as well.
And with regard to the type B fixture, if you replace it with a 3000 Kelvin fixture, again, the same question, in terms of the foot candle measurements that you're showing, will it increase, stay the same, or decrease based on your professional opinion if you swap out and abide by Mr. Ferraro's recommendation?
It would slightly decrease.
And with regard to number 4, regarding the type C fixture that's being proposed, he states that a downlit shielded wall mount fixture should be used, and the fixture is specified to be a 4000 K color. Shielded fixtures with a warmer color are recommended. Do you have a response to that?
Yes, we actually looked into a different fixture for type C that we can use that will, in addition to have a warmer color, it's actually going to be a lower output. So the hot spots that we're seeing now with the current type C fixture would go down significantly.
Okay. And so, in fact, you have a proposal, right, that I want to mark this as A1, Tom?
Sure. Why don't you mark yourself A1
Okay.
and just tell us what it is?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. So, Kevin, I'm going to show you what I've marked as A1. Okay, can you take a minute and identify that, please?
This is the proposed new type C fixture. It comes in the recommended colors, 3000 Kelvin color temperature, and its lumen output ranges between 3000 and 8000 depending on the option that's selected.
Okay, and what would you make a recommendation in line with what Mr. Ferraro suggests to the board?
Yes, we would choose a 3000 Kelvin color temperature, and to combat the hot spot, we would choose a lower output fixture as well.
And there would be, would there be sufficient shielding for purposes of addressing the concerns that Mr. Ferraro raised?
Yes, this fixture compared to the previous fixture throws light downward. Previous fixture both threw light down and out.
What's up there right now in that, the C fixture?
The C spot.
Yeah, what's where the C's are now? What is that replacing?
What is it replacing?
Yeah.
It's replacing a lantern type fixture.
Unshielded?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's unshielded.
And with regard to and just so the board is aware, this afternoon, based on Paul's comment, I've already sent to him the revised C fixture.
Correct.
Correct. And
Rob, can I just
Yeah,
ask
sure.
a quick question, just for my edification, for either Paul, for Kevin, or both of you? The difference between measuring the illumination at the ground level or eye level, Paul, versus the reference you made to glare. Is glare measured differently? Is that a different
Glare
criteria?
isn't really measured, glare is perceived, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but you see glare. You can see this, if there's an exposed source, like the previously proposed Cs, you can literally see that from miles away. If you have the new one that they have, where the light is basically down and fully shielded, has a zero cutoff angle all the way around, you're not going to see the source. If you're underneath it and look up, you'll have glare like you're looking at these fixtures here, but generally you don't have the same kind of glare.
So where the C fixtures are, I guess on the left side, you're backing up to the Mayfield development and Village Green on, I guess, behind Kings and the CVS area. So with these shielded, these revised lamps with the shields, that would
Addresses my concern.
That would
because-
address your concern about glare.
Because generally, those residential neighborhoods are a little higher ground elevation than these, so you're not going to be looking up into the lights. So you're not going to be seeing the source. They're going to be well shielded, and you know, the ones that they had before would have been a significant problem.
And you're familiar with the design that Kevin or Rob provided with you earlier?
Yes.
Okay.
And isn't there a wall back there around much of it?
That's because you've got that's where the grade change comes in. But if you can see the source, you can see that from a long distance. While that light fixture at a mile away, you can't read obviously any foot candle. You can see that source, and it's annoying.
Yeah.
That's
Some
why
of those
shielding
buildings
is
have
important.
second floor front doors too, so they can see over that.
So with regard to the proposed C fixture, especially in combination with the revised A fixture and the B fixture in terms of the color of the fixture as being recommended and being reduced to 3,000 K or Kelvin, do you have an opinion as to whether, as compared to what is shown on the plan in terms of foot candles, how those foot candle measurements would be affected by the change in the proposed fixtures?
So in regard to the A and B fixture, as I said earlier, similar or slightly reduced. So that would, the averages, the max and mins there would roughly stay the same. The only change would be the change in the C fixture, because we would go to a lower output and a 3,000 Kelvin color temperature. I believe the hotspots that we're seeing now would just go away entirely.
Well, you're still going to have a hot spot there, but it may not be so.
It may not.
It's probably not going to be over.
It's not going to be 8.2.
Right. If it might be a little over the ordinance of 4. Without doing an actual calculation, I can't say for sure, but it'll be closer to 4 than 8.
Can you eliminate one of those two C fixtures on that corner and still get a reasonably lit plan, or is it critical to have both?
Aren't they directional at that point?
They are somewhat directional, but they have a spread. That's the question, because I look at that, and the one that faces, I'm sure that the one that faces towards the bottom of the drawing faces an area where there's no light. The one that faces to the left towards the residential neighborhood, there's a B fixture on the opposite side of the parking lot, so you may get sufficient coverage there by getting rid of that one C fixture at the back of the building, keeping the one that faces towards the bank. And then you might have the light in there. I would like you to look at that.
We can explore that, but I would agree that we got to keep the one facing the bank.
Yes.
If we remove that one, the bank would be dark. So we can explore removing the one facing the back of the building.
Because that faces the residential area that contributed to the highest peak on the site.
Right.
I have a question about the fixtures, kind of in general. Do they come both in different light colors and, I guess, wattage or foot candles? I mean, are those sort of independent things you can control?
Yes, so we can choose a 3,000 Kelvin fixture and really high output. It'll throw, for example, the A1 It ranges from 29 watts to 82 watts. We can choose, there's 4 different options, and that goes from 3,400 lumens to 8,600 lumens. So in
So
addition
we
to choosing color, you can also choose the output of the fixture.
So we could compensate that decrease in foot candles a little bit
Correct.
by choosing maybe other fixtures. Is that worth it, or is it so small? Well, that's maybe a calculation.
That's
You need
really
to do.
the design.
Yeah.
That's what he's got to manipulate.
Right,
And
right.
make work.
Okay, so that's something you would have to undertake. You will undertake, is that?
Yes,
Yes.
we would do that.
All right.
I have a question. Can you talk to us about color lighting? You know, some lights look like they're blue, others look like they're red or orange, and what that Kelvin scale is?
So for reference, your home, it would typically be 2,700 Kelvin. That's that really yellow, that really warm, inviting yellow light. And I believe this room is at 3,500 to 4,000. So it's whiter, but it's not completely blue. 5,000 is just that harsh blue light.
So Paul, the color that you chose,
It's more on the lower end of the scale.
it's more of the natural kind of,
It's more what you're
Light.
used to.
Natural is 4,000.
because I have seen some of these really intense bluish lights.
And that's
they're
the
so
5,000,
ugly.
that's the 5,000 and above.
Yeah, you see them
Yeah.
in shopping centers and places like, oh my goodness, you're driving by and like, what's that about?
That's exactly why I made the comment.
Okay.
So with regard to just to kind of close the loop on this particular area, in terms of the type A and the type B fixture, we would certainly abide by Mr. Ferraro's recommendations as conditions of approval, correct? Ed?
Yes.
Okay, and with regard to the C fixture,
Can I stop you right there? Because I'm not convinced in the broad field of lighting. And Paul, maybe this is a question for you. I understand we want to address the hot spots with the C fixtures at the back of the building, especially with the neighboring communities back there and that harshness. But if one of the goals of, the goals of this lighting plan is safety and security, and my sense, I don't know if there's any data, perhaps out of your league, but Paul, maybe you can address it. I think people feel safer when you get away from the yellow light and you get more towards that 3,500, 4,000 range. So I wouldn't be in favor of the 2,700. That's like incandescent light bulbs. It's a little dim, it's a little, especially at night, when that's the only rendition you have is that yellow cast. I don't think it feels as safe, feels as secure. You come out of your car, you're walking to a remote corner of the lot, and all you have is that 2,700. I don't think it accomplishes the goals of lighting.
Do you really think there's a security issue in that parking lot? I mean, is there?
I think that's the purpose of the lighting to begin with, safety and security. It's the only reason it's there.
Has there been, you mentioned complaints from tenants.
right.
I mean, has there been any people who fell and
No,
hurt
so
themselves?
there's been no...
And has there been any robberies or anything like that?
No, we're not aware of any, in terms of security or any slip and falls at night, but we've received, or through the property manager, numerous complaints about people not feeling safe and secure. And that's why we, decided to go forward with this at considerable expense to, give, both the patrons, the tenants, the employees, better security as they're walking to and from the vehicles.
And I'm just trying to understand this. Is safe so they don't trip, secure so they don't get carjacked? I mean, I'm trying to understand.
Right, so I mean, I don't want to testify, but I do a lot of lighting work, and I will tell you that it's really a combination. It's really so that people, patrons, employees, et cetera, can feel safe, so that in terms of being in a secure environment, that nothing's going to happen to them, and that they're able to see in front of them. I will tell you that when you do applications down in Florida, okay, when you have a much older population, the foot candle measurements that are being proposed are much, much higher, because there's always a concern because of an older, more elderly population that they can't see, and that's really even more so so that they don't slip and fall, as you say. Here we certainly have plenty of older people, even myself losing our eyesight's a little bit, and been to the King Shopping Center many times, and it's pretty dark in there. So, but it really is a combination, it's a good question.
But again, too, you've never had any complaints about a slip and fall, you said.
I can tell you that in the engineering department, we have received complaints.
Okay, but I just, the facts are, I'm just trying to understand.
I've gotten that complaint.
And my point is simply this, Paul. My point is simply this. I think we kind of can agree perhaps that the 5,700 Kelvin fixtures are harsh, and we need to kind of dial that back a little bit. But I think if we go much below 4,000 or 3,500, the perception of security is going to diminish.
I frankly would have to disagree with that a little bit. I haven't said go below 3,000. I think 3,000 is good. Going back in history, this parking lot was originally lit with high-pressure sodium fixtures.
Which was all yellow.
Which was all yellow, which if you got a light meter out there and measured it, it measured a relatively high number, but it was the yellow light which kind of was, you didn't think you could see so well. Last time the site was in, they went to metal halide fixtures, which are a whiter, brighter light. Now, I don't know if you know what color that might be on the scale, what a metal halide might be, but my guess, it is probably in the 3,500 to 4,000 range. And so I think the color light that you're going to see is similar to the color light that's out there today. If you go to these 3,500, 3,000.
I thought you were recommending the 2,700.
No, I never said 27.
Well, can
3,500 for A and 3,000 for B.
Can I ask a more practical, or maybe a more layman's explanation, and maybe the witness can help us with this? As we look through the parking lot and the various foot candle power, however we describe it, safety and security, yeah, okay, we're worried about maybe a bad guy lurking behind the car, but what I'm really worried about is if I pull out my keys, can I tell which key it is? Can I see the hole on the side of the car to put my key in? Because I'm an old guy and I have cars that still have keys in the door. Can I see my shopping list if it's not on a cell phone? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to find out from you is can you bring us into the world of, practically speaking, when I see 1.7s, 2.2s, from a practical standpoint, what am I able to see? The average person able to see? And that's the safety and security I'm interested in. Can I see in my car to see that there's,
Based on the position of the light, anything involving cars, parked cars will be fine. You'll be able to see your car, you should be able to see what's inside your front seat because your windshield is such a large window. You should be able to find a keyhole. Right now, having been at the site, it's the driving lanes that it might be too dark. Maybe you can't read your grocery list if the sun's out and you're just depending on the lights. That's my perception.
Are you saying currently?
Currently, yes. It's kind of hard to match, say, what the minimum required foot candle is to be able to see, say, a grocery list. So I wouldn't be able to say definitively, but
I have a question. If you were designing something from the ground up, in the areas where you do have that difficulty seeing in the driving lanes, would you put any lights closer to the ground directly onto the road?
If I was designing it from the ground up, I would specifically using the same pole locations because you want to keep the poles where they are. You don't really want them anywhere else. You would mount an arm so that the lights are actually, they sit further out, so that it would illuminate both the car and the driving lane. That's from a ground up design.
As opposed to the single lantern sitting in the center of the pole that's put down.
And then would they have to be less? Each one would be less?
Yes, because you have more lights out there.
I mean, does it make sense to think about that if you would be in more compliance?
Well, right. So the other end of the spectrum is we also have to consider cost to the client. Doing that involves, maybe modifying the pole. The pole might not be able to support that type of weight. Because once you start going outwards, you deal with different seismic effects and forces just because you're going out. You're throwing out weight as opposed to just putting a fixture right on top of it.
Excuse me, I have another layman's question here. These readings that you have, how did you obtain these readings? Do you have some kind of meter that you just walk around the parking lot?
The readings on E101 were software simulated.
Software simulated?
Yes.
So, how accurate are they?
Fairly accurate.
Fairly accurate? So the next question I have is, was the software simulated when the stores were open or after the stores were closed? Because
No, it's not even actual.
No, it's proposed.
It's truly computer.
Okay, so
Wow.
it's not actual.
Right, this doesn't represent the existing condition, this is the proposed. And they don't have a map of the existing, based on this testimony.
Which would have been nice, by the way.
There's probably a map, it's a map of the prior approval that has the proposed at that time. But I don't know that it's that necessary.
An existing foot candle map, I think is what.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the board have anything? No.
Not sure, let me
Yes,
can
go
I
right ahead.
finish Paul's letter?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
I think this
Mhm.
will
Yeah.
address his comments.
Yeah,
Under number 5, there's a comment regarding, while overnight security light is permitted and recommended, the ordinance requires that all but security lighting be extinguished at 11 p.m. or at the end of the business day, whichever is earlier. We're not proposing to change any of the illumination times from what's currently existing, correct? Kevin? We're keeping them the same as right now in terms of the times that the lights are in operation, right?
Yes.
and that is at what time? 11 o'clock?
I believe it's 11 o'clock, and then there's lights that remain on.
Emergency.
For
Security.
security, and also for the Kings, as the anchor tenant for deliveries and things like that.
Right. So that would be the ones in the back there, particularly.
Whatever's there now in terms of overnight lighting would continue.
Can you tell us which those are?
Not right now, we could certainly, as a condition of approval, provide that to the engineering department in terms of what's overnight for purposes of security.
Rob, is there any light that's associated with the bank and the ATM?
Well, the ATM's inside.
The ATM's inside, but that's...
The door.
So you got one light over here, so I guess there's
And you also-
interior light over here.
I'm not sure if there's
They don't own
I'm not
the
sure if there's site lighting for the bank.
Kings
The
owns
bank
it.
itself has lighting, especially for the entrance area and the ATM.
Okay. I'm told by Mr. Farris, the property manager representative, that because the bank, Peacock Gladstone Bank is on a pad site, it has its own lighting
Okay.
system.
And the same
And
thing
I
with the
think
other
we
structure.
considered that
Yes, the other,
Yeah, that's...
a couple of
that's-
years ago, right?
And that's separate, and the state law regulates what the lighting needs to be around the ATM.
Okay, all right,
It's
thank you.
Separate and distinct from this town.
and in terms of the mountain heights, whatever's out there right now, that's going to continue, whether it's 12 feet or 15 feet. It's not above the ordinance limit of 15 feet, correct?
No.
Yeah, PNC over
Yeah.
there.
Just two banks, yeah.
And I think number 7 is,
Yeah, Peacock.
yeah, I think number 7 is just a comment from Mr. Furlong. That's it in terms of his letter. I don't know, Frank, you had critical in my position.
I just have one other question. As far as the missing broken light poles, have they been like that for a while or something?
Yes. I will testify for the applicant.
Yeah.
Some of those have
I
been
mean,
gone for a while.
that could be one of the things the tenants are complaining about. I mean, if they've been like that for a while.
Yeah, I don't think that there's been any, Mr. Ferris can answer that if you'd like him to. I don't believe that, from what I understand, there's been any tenant complaints specifically about the broken lights. I think it's just about the fact that they feel that it's just too dark and they need more illumination.
I did wonder, will the fixtures look the same as they do now in terms of their appearance? And if not, what will the fixtures look like?
We have it selected the final fixture, but they're gonna look, it's still a lantern style, but it won't look like what's out there now. So there's glass on every side, and you can see the light from the distance. This one is, to my knowledge, one of the examples we have, there's no glass and the light just shines downward and out.
If you look at some of the attachments to the application, there are some details on what these fixtures are. The Type A fixture that's in front of the building, I would call it a very modernistic take on a lantern. It doesn't have a cap on top, it's flat on the top, and it has kind of lantern siding.
So Kevin, in your opinion, since there is no glass on the sides, and it just shines down, is there less of that glare when you're half a mile away, when you look in that direction?
Well, these lights specifically, if you picture the light sitting here, they don't project light at the 0 degree axis. They project downward, I think it's about 75 degrees, 75 degrees. So after a certain point, if you're above the light or you're at eye level with the light and you're, say, a mile out, you can see that it's shining light down, but you can't see the glare that is in front of you.
I mean, I think the glare, at least what I think about is, above it, that area above the shopping
I'm
center.
talking about skyline.
Yeah, I mean, does it reduce that at all, that type of fixture?
Ambient light. Yes, these fixtures don't shine light upwards at all.
I would think because it doesn't have the glass on the sides, maybe you would reduce some of that sky.
You'll get it on a foggy night. But my experience with the LEDs is they're far more directional than any other fixture you could have. They're more well aimed, they're more well distributed. And these are all 0 degree cutoff fixtures, which is exactly what you want.
Okay.
Well, do you want to have a site monitoring after the installation to do any?
I think it would be appropriate to have a night light test after it's all installed to make sure that we're generally in the parameters. I can tell you that if I go out to all these spots, it's not going to say exactly what that calculation shows, but just want to make sure we don't have 10s and 12s out there. I think if they eliminate that 1/4 fixture, my gut is you're probably not going to be above 6 at that hot spot on the floor.
And that, of course, would be fine as a condition.
And if it was too high, the fixture can be changed at that spot.
Yeah,
to a lower.
It would surprise me if it got that high.
No, I don't mean just there, but anywhere.
Anywhere.
Anywhere you found a higher level reading, you could change the fixture
Yes.
to a lower wattage and be okay.
Or aren't these the kind of LEDs that can be adjusted by you after the fact with computer apps?
I'm not sure specifically, but for LEDs in general, you can get a dimming driver.
Yeah.
So that essentially lets you set the level of the light.
Usually it's almost automatic nowadays with the LEDs, but, well, what do you think?
I think you install it as per the plan, and if there's hot spots that we find, you can go back and put a dimmable fixture, dimmable driver in some of the fixtures in those specific places where you have a problem.
Okay.
I don't think it's necessarily required.
Right, that's the solution if you have the hot spots, yeah, okay.
So by going from these higher levels of Kelvin to the lower levels of Kelvin, can we correspondingly reduce the wattage, or the wattage is about the same?
The wattage is about the same.
And we're going from roughly 40 watts per fixture to 13, or what's the, how much energy are you saving?
If it's metal halogens, they're probably 150 watts.
So how that's not very high.
So we're going from 150 watts to something between 13 and 85?
Yeah.
On average, about a 60% reduction?
Say about 50%.
I'm looking at the property manager in the background who got ownership to agree to it because he's, it's a 2.5-year payback.
Calculating his electric bill right now.
It's actually less than that.
Great.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions for Mr. Nier?
Anyone? No?
So,
That's great.
I know this was covered before, but it's going to be slightly brighter in the parking lot than today. Perhaps not dramatically perceptible, but you and Paul both agree that this parking lot, just talking about the parking lot, not behind the building, but the parking lot will be slightly brighter, whatever color that may be, but slightly brighter.
I think what you will see is the spots right underneath the lights, underneath the fixtures, are not going to be really any different than they are today. What's going to happen is the spots that are darker now in between the fixtures will be brighter. You'll have a more even light distribution in the parking lot.
Okay.
Which is the important thing for lighting design, is even distribution.
Right, and I will vouch for hearing complaints about the lighting in the parking lot and the perception of safety. I will vouch for that. I've heard complaints. I've heard complaints about it in my house. And I've heard complaints about it sitting up here as township committee. So we have heard those complaints. So those are, it's not just myth that there are concerns about what the parking lot looks like.
And I think it'd be safer too for drivers backing out of parking spaces, and in the winter when there's ice, you know, I think it's just generally better for everybody to have a little light. Yep.
And Paul, are you satisfied that behind the building, that this won't affect the neighbors, that's...
The fixture change that I've recommended, along with these other fixture changes, I think all will have a positive effect in the back, because these are better directional fixtures. It's always surprised me how effective LEDs are in reducing overspill of lighting.
Okay.
And overspill, does that correlate to glare?
No.
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 Glare is...
More brightness,
Okay.
light.
What's overspill?
Excess light coming out too far from the fixture on the ground.
So not the 75 degrees that Kevin mentioned going out at the zero angle.
The older
Sky
fixtures...
glow that results.
Right, the sky, okay.
The older fixtures would not be cut off at 75 degrees. They'd be cut off, and they would be spreading wider, and you would see more light.
But that's different than the long distance glare.
Yes, yes. If you light a match in the woods, you can see it a mile away. In the dark.
Tom, perhaps at some point you can spend 3 hours talking about glare versus overspill at some
I'll be
point.
happy.
I know, Paul. That's Tom.
I just don't want to be here for that one.
I skipped his presentation on liability, so.
Right.
Oh, I didn't know what you missed.
All right, do you want to have any other witnesses,
No
or
other witnesses,
you...
unless the board has any other questions that would be appropriate for any other witness.
Board, anybody?
I guess for the
Bill?
property manager, do you manage other similar?
I'm here to swear
Oh, I'm
him in,
sorry.
so-
I'm sorry, Tom.
That's okay. Sir, please come forward, and I'll swear you in.
You good?
The public has questions.
Right.
Yeah, we're going to ask the public too. Maybe we should do that before.
Let's just wait and see, right.
Yeah, let's do that
Questions
before we
for
have
this before we
the
go to the
manager.
next?
We'll open it up to the public to see if anyone else have any questions for this witness. No, seeing none. Okay, let's have our...
Thank you, Madam Chair. So,
Property
Paul,
manager.
come up and be sworn. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Paul, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
And please state your name and the business address and spell your last name.
Paul Farris, F-A-R-I-S, 300 Interpace Parkway, Parsippany, New Jersey.
And Paul, just provide for the board who are you affiliated with?
Colliers International.
Okay, what is your role at Colliers?
Well, I'm the Director of Operations for our Property Management Group. I also am the asset manager for this particular client.
So, and you're familiar with the King Shopping Center that we were discussing this evening?
Yes, I am.
And with regard to the testimony that you heard, including my introductory comments, do you agree in terms of the complaints that you've heard from tenants, their employees, and patrons as to the darkness, or the non-darkness of the parking lot?
Yes, in about a
peak when daylight savings time hits, then they'll start to increase. But it's been ongoing. We've been managing this site since 2015, and there's numerous complaints, particularly from Kings and their customers, about the darkness of the parking lot.
And you believe that based on your review of the application, listening to the testimony this evening, that the proposal as modified per Mr. Ferraro's comments and helpful recommendations would be an improvement and hopefully alleviate those complaints?
Any improvement in the distribution of the light in the parking area would be very helpful.
Okay, I have nothing further from Mr. Ferris, but I know there was a question that somebody wanted to ask.
Yes, right. So just relative, I guess the first question, do you manage similar retail centers similar to the King Shopping Center?
Yes, we do.
And how does the current lighting here compare to those other facilities?
Most of the centers we manage have twice as much light. Poles that are 25 feet high, and even when we retrofit to LED, we are adding light. So to this gentleman's point, we have 4,000 Kelvin bright white light when they're on, like being in this room.
And is there a relationship between those, the comments or complaints about safety and security or just inappropriate or inadequate lighting versus what you're actually seeing as far as the foot candles at the other shopping centers?
In the other shopping centers, there's no complaints regarding safety and security due to light. Where we do have, it's the neighborhood.
Okay. That's it.
Any other questions, Mr. Ferris?
Any, I notice all the lights are on a photo cell, and some of them have an absolute cutoff at 11 o'clock. We talked about some fixtures are 24/7 because of their location, et cetera. But is there any difference in the warm-up on these versus the metal halide, Paul?
Oh, yeah, these are instant on.
These are instant on?
The LEDs come on instant.
And I know the LEDs in my house take a little while to light up my backyard. The they're on, the brighter they get. And it may only take 5 or 10 minutes, but it takes 5 or 10 minutes.
I've never seen that issue with LEDs.
Usually with CFLs, you have that issue. Are they LED?
I just swapped out people in the middle. But there's no reason to change there's no change. I bought them at Home Depot.
There you go.
There's no difference, no adjustment that has to be made then to the photocell timing of when they come on?
No.
Okay.
Photocells are usually set for a certain wattage, so they have a maximum. So we're going to be reducing the wattage overall.
But they wait till the ambient light becomes a
Correct.
particular level and then they kick on?
Yeah. Typically, we point them north.
And in your opinion, I'm sorry, Larry, that was a quick question. In your opinion too, is it less of a maintenance headache to keep them lit? They last substantially longer.
I can only go by where we've retrofitted them. They all come with 10-year warranties. So it's a light that's supposed to last for 10 years, never break, and when it does, it's covered, you replace it.
Well, I'm thinking about outages and how long it takes to fix them, you know what I'm saying? I know it's
Currently
metal
now,
halide,
the way we check them is we'll go during the day, tape off a photocell, turn on a time clock, and then we have to make arrangements for someone to come with a bucket truck and replace the bulb or the ballast. With the LEDs, for the most part, once they're in, I've had a site with LEDs for 3 years now, we haven't had to touch anything.
Good.
That's nice.
The sheet 100 says 5-year warranty, not a 10.
It depends on the manufacturer.
And there's no degradation over time with respect to these LEDs, or very small?
Not that I'm aware of.
They last very, very well. There always is some reduction in the light, but generally with an LED, it's either going to fail in the first year or it's not going to fail.
We have to worry 5 years out, the lighting is 20% less.
Now, the lighting levels that are on the plan assume a certain degradation in the light over time. It's not, that out of the box is going to be marginally higher than the numbers on the plan. It assumes, it's usually at 95% of the light level factor is what it's called. So it's a...
So upon installation, it'll be a little bit higher, and then over its life,
It
it'll average.
stabilizes at that lower number.
Okay, thank you.
So the other question I have about complaints is, so we've talked about complaints from customers and from the tenants themselves. Complaints from the residential neighbors behind the shopping center. Any complaints? Would those, first of all, would those complaints be directed to your
They would be
attention?
directed to the association. We have a relationship with the association in the residential. We haven't heard anything from them regarding light levels.
Okay.
In terms of Mr. Jacobs' question, you haven't gotten any complaints that the levels are too bright, correct?
No.
All right, anything else? Nothing? I'll open it up to the public again. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none? I guess we're ready, Tom.
If the board is ready, you might consider a motion to approve the site plan waiver with the, did you open for comments or just questions?
Questions?
Oh, let's open for comments.
All right, we'll open it up for comments from the public, if anybody has anything. Seeing none? We have no comments either.
So it's a motion to approve the site plan waiver with the conditions of Paul and Frank's reports and the conditions discussed this evening. They will also conduct a nightlight test after operation with inspection by the township engineer to make any adjustments that he deems necessary. And any dispute with the township engineer returns to the board for final determination. I think it'll be effective tonight so they can move right ahead and make their economical improvement.
Motion.
Such a motion.
Second.
Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
It's on now.
Oh, now it's on, okay. Great. Good job, Trina.
As long as it's on in time for the vote.
No, I fixed it in the beginning. Mr. Strackoff?
Aye.
Ms. Christie? Aye. Mr. Azealia?
Aye.
Mr. Leonard?
Aye.
Mr. D?
Aye.
Mr. Chadwick?
Aye.
Ms. Patras? Aye. And Ms. Gutschall?
Aye. Motion passed.
Thank you very, very much. It was great to be here.
You're welcome, thank you. Thank you.
And congratulations, Kevin.
Yes.
You made it through your first hearing.
That's what I said. I said you have to have your first.
You're an expert
one.
now, Kevin. You're an expert.
You're an expert now.
It's on the CV.
I did my first
And
hearing here.
I know we're done.
Did you?
And it wasn't nearly
I
as...
cannot remember the last time I had, in terms of a 200-foot list, I think I had to provide more than 240 notices. And my paralegal tells me that in my 27 years, that's my record. And the fact that there was no one who came out, I think that they all want improvement here, so.
I'll quit your wine.
I'm not lying.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay, any board comments?
I do have
Anybody?
I have a question or
Yes,
comment
Lou?
for Paul. It seems like the technology on lighting is moving faster than our ordinances can keep up with. So, looking towards a master plan, do we need to, or somewhere in the ordinances, start to really review our lighting ordinances? Or are we okay and let the applicants just adjust to it or something?
Well, I think the ordinance is okay. I don't think you necessarily have to make a change. It's just the fact that while our ordinance is strict, and many of the plans you see in front of you do have design waivers for lighting, I think it's good to recognize those design waivers, and not just increase the hotspot area, because then you have that all over. This drives it down, and you have isolated spots where you have some issues. It is advancing quickly. If we were to play with the ordinance, I might look at maybe specifying the color of the light. That's the only thing I would do as a design standard. But the illumination levels themselves are fine, and the way LED lightings have advanced, it's remarkable.
Right.
Do you believe that LED is going to be all lighting as we move forward, other than,
I recently did it was actually about a year and a half ago, I did a lighting plan for a soccer field, and we did it all in LED. For the first time I drove by it in the dark the other day, it was amazing how the light was on the field, and 15 feet off the field it was dark. It was, I couldn't believe it.
And I guess, you know, just following up on Lou's question, we've got some experts.
No.
Yes, experts.
You can't be.
Not experts.
A lot of this stuff is perception that I've found, because you can have exactly the same foot candles on a depth tight in an office environment, exactly the same foot candles, but most people will perceive LED at 4,000 Kelvin as 20% brighter, even though it's exactly the same foot candles as your old fluorescent tubes.
Yeah, and the old, particularly the high-pressure sodiums, we had that problem a lot. You'd measure the light, and it'd say 2 foot candles, but 2 foot dark.
So are you all, you know, for, you know, whether you manage a property or you own a business or you're in the architectural services, what do you guys see as, what are you putting in or what do you see being installed at your properties?
For the most part, we're putting 3,500 Kelvin in office space, 3,500 Kelvin fixtures in, and we can put in about a third, if you put a typical like 2x2 or 2x4 lay-in fixture, you can get by with like 20%, 25% less fixtures and produce the same amount of
And
light.
even if you replace like for like, there's going to be a savings in the consumption, you know, and I think that's why a lot of our clients are doing it. I'm working on a whole bunch of them for one of our clients now, where we're retrofitting like 30 sites with all new LED lighting.
And how about that issue, you know, this is an issue I know that George has talked about over the years, the glare issue, right? The long-term, when you're working with LEDs, are you seeing a reduction?
Yeah, because you're able to control it more. That's the whole thing. You know, whether it be the lighting itself or, as Paul was saying, with the fixtures that have, you know, the shielding on it. You know, so that's easier to do that with that kind of lighting. It's easier to direct it. You don't have as much ambient lighting, and you also don't have as much ambient heat coming off of the lighting. So that changes the equation. It even causes changes in the heating and air conditioning field as well. So.
And Lou, what about, you're doing some work at your building, do you switch on the lighting?
I'm telling you, I did switch them all out, I have fluorescents everywhere, and I'm just constantly changing the Kelvin rating, because it's either too blue or it's too yellow. And we switched some in our house to the LEDs, same, like 1/3 the wattage, and it's brighter.
My power bill's
So
low.
now I'm thinking, boy, I have to go back and through 2 buildings and just retrofit everything.
We just did in our clubhouse.
Yeah, I was
We're
gonna say,
News at
we just-
11 on that. We'll
yeah,
see
we
what our
just-
power bills are in a couple of months.
In the clubhouse or in the parking lot?
The lenses,
No,
the translucent
inside.
lenses, or are you doing like a, because the tapes are all have a lens over
We
them
did
now.
troffers in my work projects, but in our clubhouse, we used like a prismatic fixture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, which is, and they're really even. You don't even see in the old ones, you see the tubes, but this is just, it's an even light all the way across. So they just put them in like 2 weeks ago, so it'll be interesting to see what the savings is.
Are they that nice yellow light, or they?
No, it's a
Well,
white.
the ones that in our clubhouse are more like 4,000, they're more of a natural light, so, which is similar to what we had before. Matter of fact, I didn't even see it until I looked up, I'm like, hey, they changed them. So, you know, pretty much the
If you go
same.
back to the old fluorescent days, the color of your carpeting would change by what kind of fluorescent tube you use.
Yeah.
So if you used like a 3,200 Kelvin fixture, even in fluorescent, it gives it a kind of a yellow look, and if you went up to like 36, 3,800, gives it a little bit more of a white look. They used to say that, you know, sunlight was, you know, 4,000, but now they go to 5,700. I don't know what the heck that is.
And then you're on the cool light, which is a blue.
Well, that's
Yeah,
what these
that's what
57s are doing. They're
Ironically,
blue.
the cooler light is a higher temperature.
Yeah. Yeah, that gets a bit misleading.
And if you have a blue colored carpet scheme, you go with the blue light, not the yellow light.
But a difference is when we go to this field at night, back in the old days when you had the big high-intensity discharge, big lights that just shone down, they hung them up there and that was it. With the LEDs, they actually climb up there on the pole and they use a laser to point to a specific spot on the field, is how closely each one of those fixtures gets aimed. That's how precise the cutoff is.
They can even do it with apps and computers now, right, Paul? In
Yeah.
some cases, you know, if you have the drivers on it. Yeah. Pretty cool.
Of course, all our cars now have the LED lights also.
Yeah, especially the blue ones, you think a cop is following you.
Yeah.
But, so coming back to Lou's question, so on the outdoor fixtures, whether it's the monument signs or the downlighting, is there something about this technology that we should reevaluate with, and maybe not necessarily the ordinance, well, I guess it really is the ordinance, on the standards that we're applying, or the design specs that we should look to from the applicants?
I think one thing that we can do now that you mentioned signs, because I think we have a section in our ordinance that gives a maximum wattage for the lighting on a sign, and it was not designed around LED, because I think it's 150 watts. A 150 watt LED will burn a hole in the sign. So we can look at that and maybe come up with another, whether we specify as lumens might be more an appropriate measure.
If you specify the lumens just in terms of color rendition, and then you specified, the foot candles, that doesn't have to change, those standards stay the same. If you just specify the lumen for a natural light, probably all you have to do.
I have a question. Is it possible to create an ordinance or make all the ordinances match so it's the same Kelvin light throughout town, no matter where you go? So instead of just going from blue to yellow to green to whatever, it's basically the same? Does that make it, is it crazy, or?
You can put a design standard in your ordinance that tells you what the maximum temperature is on your light. And you can put a minimum, but there's always going to be a range, and you're always going to have a site that's older that has still the high pressure sodiums or the metal halides. And so
Can we use this range that we came up with tonight, 3,000 to 4,000 Kelvin?
So if they finish at the Hill Shopping Center, we drive by and we all really like that light, we can say, well, maybe this is a standard that we should use throughout the town when people are retrofitting things?
And that's what I would suggest we do. Let's let it get in there and look at it. I think it's going to work well.
How much of the design, right, like I look at lighting, and particularly when you talk about temperature and color of light, as integrated into the aesthetic of the site, right? So if we're talking about something like the Pluckaman Inn, they're going to go with a cooler, warmer, more yellow site because it's an older building, right? And so maybe they have the same foot candles and it's light enough that people can see. And so I don't know that we want necessarily the same color light throughout town, because part of that's design. Right, it might not necessarily go
She
with
makes
the
a good
light.
point, but is that as important outside as it would be inside?
You put a blue light on a building like,
A red brick building, it may have a completely different,
Right.
than a white, shiplap siding kind of deal.
That's perception.
That's perception.
I have a
So
photographer husband
we had that
that's
issue with
involved
it was the Chase Bank, with that drive-through, with that very bright,
Yeah.
That's an older fixture where there is a reflector below, the source is still up there. You have the lower reflector. And that's the older design styles where the stuff just shot all over the place.
Now, how did that get, well, I guess first question, was that resolved? And if it was not resolved, is that an enforcement situation? Or is that a grandfathered
It's
condition?
It is the fixture that was approved on the plan. At the time, the testimony was they had to do that to meet the state standards for the ATM lighting. But that's site lighting circa 10 years ago, 12 years ago, after that place was done. Today, it would be different.
Moving quickly.
Is there any possibility that we should look at, I'm just going back to like architectural graphic standards. So, years ago, you would say a light pole in a parking lot needed to be 25 feet off the ground. Because you're talking about these fixtures being so directional now, could we potentially change the spacing, change the height of these fixtures as a result of the greater efficiency and capabilities of this new style of lighting?
Generally speaking, the taller the fixtures, the fewer you need. You get shorter, you need more fixtures to get the coverage.
But we can go higher now without having that.
You can go higher, but the higher you go, the more you can see up into the fixture.
Especially,
If you have a
Especially-
16-foot fixture, you can see it when you're close to it. If you have a 25-foot fixture, you can see up into it from a further distance.
Okay.
And you'll see the source a little.
Even if,
a little
even
more.
with the flat panel light, you'll be able to see it from angles.
is that glare or spillover?
You get back to the plans.
I think it's the visible light. It's visible light. I mean, that's what he's talking about saying you can see it from a mile. Visible light, that's not shielded, is just, that's what it is, visible light. And you're trying to shield and use cutoff fixtures to stop that, to limit that. You're never going to completely stop it because in the parking lot, you're going to be able to see the fixture below it. And on the road nearby, if you're downhill of it, you're going to see it. And in the apartments nearby, if it's too high, you're going to see it. So this.
I was more going that, can we get by with fewer fixtures if we can get by with lowering the fixtures even further and still get the same illumination?
I think you're gonna end up with a lot more fixtures.
Yeah.
And the other consequence of low fixtures is you get greater hotspots.
Greater hotspots
Because
and more.
you take the same
focal
fixture
spots.
that's here, you put it down here, the horizontal measured on the ground is now higher because you're closer to the ground.
There's a balance,
You know,
and, if we have a pretty good ordinance, if somebody wants to deviate from it for a particular reason, they can ask for a waiver for that wattage and that signage, and that, it's not that hard to do what they want to do. And you're pretty, you listen to what people say about what their goals are, and you can work with that. I don't know whether did Bob Holtaway work on this ordinance, Paul, the current standards?
Yes.
Bob was quite an expert at lights.
There was a little bit about electricity and lighting.
That's his thing.
That's his thing.
So, one more question. As far as this hearing, how different was the site plan waiver hearing than if they were coming in for site plan approval for the lighting?
Not that different. They didn't quite do the full site plan drawings that we would normally require.
And process, it's amended preliminary and final site plan, a lot more costly. The escrow fees are higher, the application fees are higher. They need a lot more review to identify all the checklist waivers they need. This is the kind of application that begged for the site plan waiver process.
Okay.
Okay.
So is there a way that we can eliminate them being here altogether? They're just replacing lights.
Yeah, they didn't need design waivers,
Yeah, they need.
yes, but they needed design waivers.
Okay.
Seems a
Anything
little
else?
crazy.
Any more comments? No?
The only comment I want
Yeah.
to make is the subcommittee, I'd just like to
Yes.
meet just at the end so we can find a
Yes,
meeting, arrange for
date.
another date.
Mhm.
That's
Definitely. Okay.
And I'm not here next week.
You're not here next week. I'm not here next week either.
I'm gone for 2.
You're going for 2. All right, well, we'll find a date.
What's on the agenda for next week?
Nothing. We have another night off.
Oh, we don't even have a meeting scheduled?
No meeting next week.
You're not
Okay.
meeting next, you're not
No,
missing
no
next.
I can
meeting
do my thing without,
without being absent.
And we also don't have
There you
any
go.
applications for December yet.
without being there.
Okay, so let's adjourn. Hear me?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Approved.
Okay, we're finished. We are finished.
And we lost Frank on Larry's second question. What's that? Once you asked your second question about lighting, Frank finished it.
Oh, this, oh.
He was gone.